right, well, an official good morning to everybody. Welcome to the Unit 3 hearing for the We the People National Finals. My name is Emily Voss. I am the We the People Coordinator for Virginia, and I'm joining you this morning from James Madison's Montpelier. So in just a moment here, I'll have the judges introduce themselves, and then they'll invite you to introduce yourselves and your coaches. You all pretty well know the drill, but we will be reading out the question for the benefit of the recording. And then you all go into your 4-minute presentation from there. And, you know, as we talked about, I'll hold up the signs for 1 minute and time, and y'all will have a great conversation. So with that, judges, whoever's in charge this round, please take it away.
Unmute, Doc.
Yeah, I've got to unmute. That's the only mistake I'll make all day, I'm sure. Well, yes, as Emily suggested, we're just going to have a conversation. So we want you to relax. We're going to have fun learning from you about the Constitution. My name is Joe Stewart. I teach in the political science department at Clemson University in South Carolina. Been involved with the We the People program for a long time and always very much enjoy having these conversations. Good to see the people from Indiana and looking forward to this. So, Judge Miles.
Yeah, I want to warn Dr. Rogers, I've seen these people before, and I know they're two teachers, and they're tougher than we are. They're going to be hard for us to keep up with because they're really good. Ms. Chandler and Ms. Kane look so sweet and so nice, but they're not. They've got them ready for us in every way imaginable. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I want to compliment you on one other thing. I see a name here on the screen with you. I think having your state coordinator totaling up the scores at the end of the day is going to give you a real advantage before this day is over. Not that you need it, but Carl Green, it's good to see your name on here. Thank you for everything you're doing for us today. Dr. Rogers.
Mike, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Mike Miles from Birmingham. These people know me. We know each other pretty well.
Okay.
We do a lot of stuff, but I'm Mike Miles from Birmingham, Alabama. And there are times I wish I lived in Indiana because y'all know how to do this right. This is fun.
Hi, I'm Donald Rogers. I'm retired from teaching history at Central Connecticut State University. I've done We the People a long time. It's a great program. I love having these conversations, and I think you're going to do really well, and you won't need any extra help. I know that.
Right.
Okay, please introduce yourselves and your teachers.
Thank you and good morning, judges. We are Unit 3 representing Team Indiana. We are 4 seniors hailing from Hamilton Southeastern High School in Fishers, Indiana. My name is Muntu Munaf. I'm the unit captain, and I plan on attending Indiana University next year to study physics.
My name is Brianna Wright, and next fall I plan on attending Indiana University to study public administration and affairs.
Hi, my name is Savannah Sheely, and next fall I plan on attending Purdue University to study supply chain information and analytics.
Hello, my name is Joshua Matasowski, and next fall I will be attending Butler University to study arts administration with a focus in theater.
Good for you.
And our team coach is Ms. Chandler and our unit mentor, Ms. Kane.
Great. Well, good to see you both again. Okay, we'll look at question 1 today out of Unit 3, and I will read the question so we'll have it recorded. It's the same reason we asked Mike to introduce himself, so there's no plausible deniability if someone wants to check up on this. Okay, question 1 is a quote from Justice Holmes. I do not think the United States would come to an end if we lost our power to declare an act of Congress void. I do think the Union would be in peril if we could not make that declaration as to the laws of the several states. What impact has judicial review had on federalism? Is judicial review a counter-majoritarian practice? Please support your position. What limits, if any, would you place on the practice of judicial review? You may begin.
Chief Circuit Judge Diane Sykes said,
The court's legitimacy arises from the source of its authority, which is, of course, the Constitution, and is best preserved by adhering to decision methods that neither expand nor contract, but legitimize the power of judicial review.
Judicial review allows appellate courts to determine a national or state legislative or executive act in violation of the Constitution. Article 6 of the Constitution states, "The Constitution is the supreme law of the land," and in combination with the 14th Amendment's incorporation doctrine, appellate courts could invalidate state laws.
Federalism exists when power is shared between local, state, and national government, with enumerated powers outlined in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Judicial review has a significant impact on federalism as it allows the Supreme Court to declare state laws unconstitutional and enact new federal policies through a simple majority vote. In Obergefell v. Hodges in 2015, the court used reasonable judgment to impose fundamental rights.
Judicial review was first applied in the United States in 1796, which addressed a direct tax. In 1803, the courts established the review power in Marbury v. Madison. Court members policed congressional power by invalidating the Missouri Compromise and Dred Scott v. Sanford in 1857.
More recently, the Supreme Court has taken a more centralized approach to decisions by enforcing a variety of individual rights against local and state governments in Roe v. Wade in 1973 and Lawrence v. Texas in 2003, in which the court struck down state laws. These decisions respectively legalized abortion and sodomy.
Our entire unit believes judicial review is a counter-majoritarian practice, by overturning laws created by elected officials whose purpose is to reflect the will of the people. Judicial review prefers the ideals of the Constitution over the majority will. My colleague Joshua and I believe judicial review is an essential component of the democratic process, as it is the judiciary's purpose to ensure laws passed by Congress adhere to the Constitution, regardless of the majority will.
Moonto and I disagree with our colleagues. As attorney Alexander Bickel noted in 1962,
when the Supreme Court declares unconstitutional a legislative act, it thwarts the will of the representatives of the actual people of the here and now, not on behalf of the prevailing majority, but against it.
this practice undercuts the democratic nature of our government by neglecting the will of the people in favor of unelected justices.
However, according to Bruce Ackerman, a Yale law professor, judicial review may also be majoritarian. Sometimes elected officials pass laws that fail to reflect the will of the people. Brown v. Board of Education in 1954 decided racial segregation in public schools is unconstitutional, which opposed the separate but equal doctrine and Jim Crow laws. 2 months after the 1954 decision, Harvard Law School professor Arthur E. Sutherland argued public opinion in favor of racial equality had been gradually increasing. Because of judicial review, the courts undermined laws passed by elected legislators. Thus, it can be argued they promoted the will of the people.
Since judicial review holds enormous power, debate exists on whether or not limits should occur. As of now, the only way a Supreme Court decision can be reversed is by the court reversing itself or the addition of an amendment to the Constitution.
Brianna and I believe there should be no limits set on judicial review, as the courts should act as sole interpreters of the Constitution and serve as a check on the other branches.
Savannah and I believe that current limits on federal court power to review legislation should be exercised. The exceptions clause of Article 3 allows Congress to limit appellate jurisdiction by judicial stripping. This curbs judicial activism and legitimizes review.
Former Justice Robert Jackson noted,
"We are not final because we are infallible, but we are infallible only because we are final." This is the conclusion of our prepared testimony, and we are now ready for your questions.
Well, thank you. Perfect. Too. And you've given us a lot to think about here. I want you to go back. You mentioned the 14th Amendment as a mechanism for affecting federalism. Explain to me in a little bit more detail why the 14th Amendment is important.
So we can see through the incorporation clause in the 14th Amendment that states can the federal government can impose laws against states, and states have to adopt them nationally. And that proves that a centralized government is being promoted with federalism.
and to add on top of that, the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment also restricts states from imposing any discriminatory acts or legislation from being enacted, and allows the judicial branch to step in and prevent that from occurring.
To add on to Joshua's statement, this is through the Due Process Clause when it says that nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, which is very similar to the Fifth Amendment, but it takes this onto a federal level, therefore supporting federalism.
This is to add on to that, this is a significant expansion of federal power, as well as it is a direct way for the federal government to impose restrictions on state and state constitutions.
Mike, you're muted.
You've done a good job of saying, two of us feel this way, two of us feel that way, and that's helpful to us and it covers the stuff pretty well. But you've got some core beliefs about the Constitution here and how the court should respond to it. If Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg had listened to your essay this morning, which one of them would have agreed with what you've been saying more?
I think Justice Scalia would personally agree with my colleague Savannah and my own opinions of judicial restraint, while Justice Ginsburg may agree with my other colleagues. And this is because Justice Scalia preferred the original meaning of the Constitution to be interpreted and believed in judicial restraint rather than judicial activism.
Is that a fair test of the Constitution? The people that wrote this didn't envision social media. They didn't envision perhaps same-sex marriage being litigated. Is it fair for this document to be expected to cover every new societal issue that comes up, or is the document strong enough to withstand change?
I believe that was one of the reasons why the Bill of Rights was included in the Constitution, was to adapt to societal changes and to include any new changes and movements that get involved in government.
Good answer. Dr. Rogers, I'm good.
So did the U.S. Supreme Court exercise its power to review state legislation before the adoption of the 14th Amendment? And did the Article 6 that you mentioned, did that figure in to the Supreme Court's exercise of that power before the 14th Amendment?
One case that I'm aware of where the federal court stepped into state powers was Hunter v. Martin, where Virginia courts believed that they didn't have to follow the jurisdiction of the federal courts. However, it was decided that the Supreme Court was just that, the Supreme Court. It was the top level of the courts, and any ruling it made towards state courts would have to follow.
How about state legislation? Any cases on state legislation?
One recent example of a case taking down state legislation could be Roe v. Wade, for instance, in which it struck down the abortion laws in multiple states, over a dozen states, that prevented women from gaining abortions.
Right. So that's a 14th Amendment case. Are there cases before the 14th Amendment that the Supreme Court struck down state laws?
Yes, one case is Minor v. Happersett, and in this case, it protected the rights of women and those under 18 and African Americans, and this was before the 14th Amendment was passed.
Another example could be McCulloch v. Maryland, in which the court struck down a Maryland statute that taxed a federal bank.
Good. What was the reasoning for in that case?
I believe it was cited that the federal bank had a higher jurisdiction than the state court had in taxing it.
Okay, I want to switch gears here. You talked about the court being the ultimate arbiter of judicial of what the Constitution means. Don't we have a lot of other people? If you and I decide to not comply with a court's decision, aren't we interpreting the Constitution. And as long as we get away with it, that's something that overrides the Constitution.
So we can see with Andrew Jackson's enforcement of the Trail of Tears, how the Supreme Court advised against it and said that it was illegitimate, yet they didn't have any enforcing powers. So the executive branch stepped in and although it was unconstitutional, they still enforced the Trail of Tears.
And this lack of power in the judicial branch also pulls in issues with the exceptions clause of Article 3. I think the framers in their intent also wanted the legislative branch to have a say in what issues are constitutional and what issues are not constitutional, and which is why they included that small snippet that allows them to make exceptions to the court's jurisdiction and have a say in determining those issues.
It's hard to do this one quick, but the confirmation processes for the justices have been pretty awful for the last 20 or 30 years. Is there a better way to confirm, to go through the confirmation process than the Senate Judiciary Committee? Can you think of a better way to do it?
One debated way, so in Indiana, we have state judges that are elected. However, I think that this would put a political bias in the Supreme Court should the people elect Supreme Court judges and justices. So I personally think that that would not be a viable solution despite it being debated.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Hey, and that's time. So you get the last word, Joshua. Thank you. Good job. Well, we want to give you a few comments. I thought you had a good kind of what I would call a sweep of the question. He focused us first on legitimacy, talked about Article 6, and took clear positions and articulated when the team had opposing points of view and articulated why you thought that. When I pushed about incorporation, you clearly talked about what's important with the 14th Amendment as the court incorporating at least some of the Bill of Rights under the incorporation doctrine. You mentioned how equal protection clause has been used to limit, but then you came back in with for the incorporation doctrine, it's been the due process clause that's been most important. So that's what's important to remember there. Always remember the court has consistently used due process clause to apply the Bill of Rights to the states. I wish we'd have more time to talk some more about the limits on judicial review, because it's a really interesting kind of aspect of to what extent that each one of us interpret the Constitution. Everybody, we talk about the Supreme Court as the final arbiter for exactly the reason you suggested, but then people feel quite comfortable saying, well, I know what the Constitution means. Also wish we'd had more time to talk about the activism and restraint aspect, because I can point out, if as long as we define our terms, I can point out times when Justice Scalia would be defined as an activist just as much as and other times when he would be a restrainist. Where you stand depends on where you sit. But the thing I enjoyed is that you clearly had wrestled with these issues, and I very much enjoyed our discussion.
Joe, I would love, if it were possible, to have Andrew Jackson was referred to 2 or 3 times in this today. The Chief Justice likes his opinion, let him enforce it, is the quote that I always think about when I hear his name. I appreciate you responding to Joe's question in reference to Andrew Jackson, because Joe knew Andrew Jackson personally. They were very close friends.
That's right. He's from this area of the country. Yeah.
So that's why he appreciated it that much. you've made us ask you some questions today that we haven't asked up until now, a few of these, because as Joe said to you, your essay was so comprehensive that you gave us so many places we could have gone. We tried to hit on as many of them as we could. But as Joe said, I wish we could have had, 10 or 15 minutes with you on each one of those because you were ready for us and you would have handled it. I was teasing your state coordinator at the beginning, but I said this a little while ago to another group, and I've said it to you before, but it was never more true than today. Greatest gift a person can have in life is the gift of a good teacher. And you have that. Janet is just about one of the best there is. And Alana is a great unit manager because she knows what to do. Tim Colgreen was on the staff in Ohio. He graduated from Ohio State and came to Indiana, and that seemed wrong to me somehow. I don't think he should have been allowed to do that. But I think since he's on the screen with us, he deserves an awful lot of credit today too for the depth of your program and the strength of your program, and for you to be the state champion from Indiana, from a team, from a state with that much depth and quality, is a great tribute to you and to Janet and Alana and Tim as well. Thank you for today, Dr. Rogers.
So thank you to the team for your presentation and your articulate responses to our questions. I thought your introduction was very comprehensive. It covered a lot of ground, from the origin of the Constitution down to the present day. You cited some relevant cases, relevant sections of the Constitution, relevant authority, Bickle, Professor Ackerman at Yale. That was good. I don't know what Mr. Miles thinks. I thought that you gave a really good answer to his question about what would Ginsburg and Scalia think. I thought that was a good response. You had the makings for an answer to my question about, well, how the Supreme Court respond to state legislation before the 14th Amendment. And so you gave some good 14th Amendment examples. I think one was Minor versus Happersett, and that's sort of after the Civil War. But McCulloch was, I think, the launching pad. I mean, there you won something, because what the court does there is strike down a Maryland state law, that tried to tax the federal government on the premise that that the Article 6 makes the federal law the supreme law of the land. So that would have been a case you could have really built upon, and there's others you could have gone to that applied the contract clause, Article 1, Section 10. Striking down state laws that violate the contract clause or the commerce clause. So there's a lot more there that you could have worked with to answer my question. But that's a detail, and the rest of the presentation really stood very high above that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.